Good morning, everyone. My name is Africa Robinson. I am the ICB administrator, and joining me today for the ICB presentation are two conferees from ICB, Lori Evans and Phil Bolander. Next slide, please. I'll just get into to the ICB, just a general overview. If you want more information about myself or the other two speakers, our bios have been provided to everyone. The role of ICB is to afford taxpayers an opportunity to resolve disagreements with the department at the earliest possible state, which is after a liability, deficiency, or claim denial has been proposed, but before commencement of the formal protest and administrative hearing process. If you are afforded ICB rights, you will receive notice of such from audit. However, if you pay the tax liability or sign the audit return, you will not receive ICB rights. You have to have a protestable issue for ICB to consider for review. If you do exercise your ICB rights, you'll have 60 days to request review by completing an ICB-1. Upon receipt of your ICB-1, it will be reviewed and you'll be notified if jurisdiction has been accepted or denied. If we accept jurisdiction, your case will be assigned to a conferee who will contact you about your submission. If you submit an ICB-1 in which you agree that the auditor has properly applied the law but disagree with the law, ICB is not the proper forum for that type of argument. Your ICB-1 request must identify the proposed audit finding you're disputing, state the basis for the dispute, and support your position. Also, if you're using a POA, power of attorney, as referenced earlier in the audit presentation, you will need to submit Form Illinois 2848. Some taxpayers elect to submit that form along with their ICB-1. However, for faster processing, we recommend that you submit it directly to rev.poa@illinois.gov. The assigned conferee will work with you during the review process and conclude with writing a recommendation for consideration to the ICB board. The ICBC board consists of our general counsel, the Board of Appeals program administrator, and the audit program administrator. The board will make a determination and an action decision will be issued, which you will receive a copy of, as well as audit. Audit is obligated to comply with the terms of the action decision. There are three possible outcomes stemming from ICB's review. The audit could be upheld, thus no changes. There can be a partial change or a complete reversal of the audit assessment. As it relates to the overall process, the average number of days in which a case has been in ICB is less than a year, exactly 249 days as of my last count, and this is all inventory based. I will note that this is a tremendous turnaround from previous years where cases would reside in ICB for well over a year. I can't take any credit for that. My predecessor, Dan Hall, made it one of his initiatives to expedite the process of reviewing ICB cases, and he has successfully done that. And so again, now the average age of a case in ICB is about 249 days. As of the end of May, ICB's inventory consists of 235 cases, a combination of income tax and sales tax. I will say that sales tax is the majority of those cases. Next slide, please. Thank you. We have conferees located in our Chicago and Springfield offices. There are 3 full-time income tax conferees and 3 full-time sales tax conferees. We have 1 contract employee who's a sales tax conferee. You'll have an opportunity to hear from both an income tax conferee and a sales tax conferee in a little bit. Our conferees have tremendous amount of experience, skills, and expertise. They work really hard to do a thorough review and provide sound recommendations to the ICB board. Next slide, please. The best way to contact ICB is via email. That email is monitored by myself and an assistant. And you can use that email to file your ICB-1, your ICB-2s, And this will avoid the need to file anything paper form. You don't have to mail anything in. We don't need a certified a letter of any kind. Again, the best method is to utilize the email address, which is rev.icb@illinois.gov. This also makes it easier to notify you if your ICB-1 has been accepted or rejected. We also use that same email address to inform you if the ICB needs to be perfected. Sometimes the signature isn't in the proper location, it's not dated, or required information is missing. And so to get a quick turnaround, it's easier just to send an email and then for you to respond with the same email address. This also allows you an opportunity to request additional time to submit supplemental information after you've submitted your ICB-1. You can also use this email address to ask general questions about the ICB process or to check on the status of your case. Next slide, please. Notable things happening with an ICB. We've recently added 2 new conferees, sales and use tax conferees. They started in February and March. One works out of the Chicago office and the other in the Springfield office. They both come from the audit division. Thank you, Max. And the additional staff will help decrease the review process for that sales, that tax type, which is sales and use tax. ICB cases are assigned to conferees on a first in, first out basis so that the oldest dockets cases are getting addressed first. Taxpayers have the option of selecting an in-person, WebEx, or telephone conference. The in-person options are for Chicago, Springfield, or Des Plaines. You will select your preferred method on your ICB-1. You're not obligated to select either. If you do not make a selection, the conferee will review your request based on the information you've provided and any information at their disposal. Next slide, please. Our inventory is dependent upon what's happening in audit, and things have been fairly consistent with regard to the number of cases we see in ICB year to year. I believe the percentage is about 3 to 4 of audits completed. Audits come to ICB. The types of cases we're seeing for sales and use tax are 1099-K, waiver audits, and farm equipment and machinery. On the income tax side, apportionment, unitary groups, PSI, reasonable compensation, residency, and Schedule Cs. We have seen an uptick in requests to address audits outside periods that are before ICB. ICB has no authority to address matters that are not before us. However, there are opportunities to work with audit and legal to address periods outside of ICB's jurisdiction. We've also seen more ICB-2s, which are settlement offers. That increase is related to the Wayfair decision and leveling the playing field. Next slide, please. Key things to remember when engaging with ICB. We do not conduct a re-audit, nor do we raise new issues not identified in the audit or by you. Your ICB-1 must specify the issues in the audit in which you are seeking review. If you do not raise an issue that was not identified in the audit, it will not be reviewed by ICB. That includes requests for penalty abatement. Regarding the ICB-2, if you submit an ICB-2, you can do that anytime prior to the issuance of an action decision. An ICB-2 can be submitted with your ICB-1, and again, anytime during the ICB process, so long as the action decision has not been submitted. When the action decision is issued, the ICB process is considered terminated. Any offer may be accepted, rejected, or countered by ICB, and the taxpayer or its representatives will be notified of the ICB's decision with regard to the offer as part of the action decision. If a settlement offer is agreed to, the taxpayer is usually given 30 days to solidify the agreement by signing the offer and returning it. I will also note that the initiation of discussions about settlement offers can begin with the taxpayer presenting an ICB-2 or the ICB board recommending a settlement offer to the taxpayer. Next slide, please. I spoke earlier about the average age of a case in ICB. It is very important for you all to note that you all can help with decreasing the number of days a case is with ICB. And you do that by working collaboratively with audit and with ICB, and by responding timely to requests for information. Conferees work with the auditor to understand their findings. If the conferee has to request additional information from you that wasn't provided to the auditor when requested, that just adds to the amount of time that the case is with ICB. Also, what's important is when you prepare your ICB-1, it's helpful to be thorough and support your position with documentation and citations. We want to be as helpful as possible, but we can't do that without working with you and having that cooperation between ICB and the conferee. I'm sorry, between the taxpayer and the ICB conferee. Next slide, please. A few more things to note. There is a 60-day window in which you can file for review for ICB. Taxpayers will sometimes miss that window by just a day. There's nothing ICB can do if you do not file your ICB-1 within the 60-day window. Once that window is closed, again, it's out of our hands, and there's no wiggle room. There's nothing we can do to reconsider your request. So it's important that you be mindful of the date. It is recommended that you get your ICB-1 in as soon as possible, and you can always supplement your ICB-1 later. The main thing is to beat that 60-day window. Again, if you are unable to meet that window, there's nothing we can do in terms of considering a request. Again, I mentioned just a minute ago that oftentimes in the ICB-1, there isn't a request for penalty abatement, and the taxpayer may want to bring that up later. Again, there are timeframes in which ICB has the authority to review anything. If you do not bring it up in your ICB-1, we have no authority to address it. So be mindful that if you want penalty abatement, to bring it up in your ICB-1 request. Also, if at any time you make a payment of the tax liability while you're in ICB, that results in agreeing to the audit, and ICB will no longer be an option, and you will be dismissed from ICB's jurisdiction. However, if there's any unpaid audit issue, that still can be addressed by ICB. Sometimes that's usually, we see that with penalty abatement requests. That may be the only issue that the taxpayer is disputing. And that actually concludes my brief presentation. I will now turn the floor over to Lori Evans, who is our income tax conferee, and she will speak about her role as an income tax conferee. Lori, the floor is yours.
Good morning. My name is Lori Evans. I've been with the department for 26.5 years. Worked in various areas of the department, including audit. As an income tax ICB conferee, I have seen numerous different issues come before the board to be reviewed. I'd like to address a couple of those issues and what you can do to expedite your resolution through ICB. Of course, ICB's role is to effectively and efficiently resolve any proposed audit assessment if possible. Some issues we've been seeing as of late revolve around the personal service income, reasonable allowance for compensation paid, deduction allowed for partnerships. It's key to remember that the information you provide to audit or to ICB needs to clearly identify what services the partner is providing to the partnership. Now, the partnership may own the land, and then there's an S corporation renting that land or building from the partnership, and they may be related in that the shareholders of the S corporation are also the partners of the partnership. If that is the case, we need to have a clear separation of services provided between the partnership and the S corporation, because the partners need to do something above and beyond what it is they're doing as employees of the S corporation that are not related to the administration of the partnership. That's a very key point. Another issue we've been seeing a lot of is the disallowance of sole proprietorship expenses from the federal return, which increases an individual's adjusted gross income, which of course is the starting point for an Illinois return. with that, we need to see support for income, support for the expenses reported, all on the Schedule C. And their audit is when they perform that audit, what they're performing the audit on is whether or not it's a valid business. Then if it's a valid business, are deductions related to that business valid? So the key to that is making sure you provide audit with every possible amount of information you can. And that results in actual bookkeeping from the sole proprietorship. You know, their books and records, general ledgers, checking accounts, credit card statements, invoices, everything that relates to that. As Africa mentioned earlier, if you are petitioning ICB, but in your ICB petition, you're stating that you agree that the auditor has applied the law correctly and you're just not agreeing with the law, ICB is not the venue for that. We have some financial organizations that like to come forward in ICB arguing the throw out of service sales. They don't think it applies to financial organizations. That is a matter of law, not a matter of something that ICB can address. Trying to think of anything else. All I can say is, as a conferee, what I appreciate most is the ability to communicate with either the taxpayer or the taxpayer's representative during the course of this review process. And the more communication we have and the more information that's provided, if requested, the quicker and faster we can come to a resolution. And of course, that's everybody's goal, is to achieve a resolution. That is all I have to say. The next person up is Phil Bolander, Sales Tax Conferee.
Good morning, everyone. As Lori said, my name is Phil Bolander. I've probably been around as long as anybody with the department. I started in October 1st of 1976 as a revenue auditor. After 6 years, I was fortunate to be promoted to revenue auditor supervisor. In 2002, the Informal Conference Board became active, and I was chosen to be one of the first conferees. And with that, I've always enjoyed it. And with the goal to resolve cases, and and sometimes help taxpayers. Other times you reaffirm what the audit did. In my thing, there's basically to work with the taxpayers is really an exchange of information. My vehicle basically is a recommendation, and that comes in two parts. The first part is the information that leads up to the recommendation, but I actually look at that information more importantly even than my actual recommendation, which can be accepted, rejected by the board. But I really truly want to get all of your information so I can basically explain to the board, and they'll have everything, whether they agree with me or not, but they have all the facts before them. This exchange of information is really done at different levels. Obviously, as Africa said, your ICB1 needs to be very specific. You have to, if you don't bring it up, I'm really not allowed to take that on. That's in the early days of ICB, we did everything, but now we're basically we will just what you brought up. So the ICB is where you start, and that's basically gets you to the informal conference board, and it'll be assigned to me. At the conference itself, you can bring in additional documentation. We can discuss it then, but I also will afford you the chance to submit additional information afterwards. As I said before, my goal is to resolve the cases. I don't want any stone unturned. Therefore, I'm very liberal. We usually allow 30 days, although there has been exceptions to that, as such, to provide information. Now, the actual information, I'd like to talk to you about. Obviously, I have certain restrictions as to just as the as to hang on. Am I still live?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, something popped up. Okay, as Africa said, inability to pay. I cannot do anything with you. I'm sorry that this taxes are sometimes very painful, but that is something that if you bring it up at the conference, I really there's nothing I can do. That's a situation for the Board of Appeals. A lot of our cases, from when I started to now, are basic cash business cases. Presently, the Audit Bureau conducts them using the 1099-Ks. That basically a 1099-K includes the cash, the debit cards, and the credit card information, and the Audit Bureau marks those up. Your argument to something like that is got to be more than just it's the markup is too high or something like that. There are different ways that we will entertain the information that you provide us. You basically got two areas to look at. You can try to prove that the markup is too high, or that the information or the charges that are in the credit cards and the debit contain non-taxable items. And that is something that you'll need to talk to your client. Cash businesses, the only way the Audit Bureau does the 1099-Ks is if there's no records or inadequate records. And inadequate records, that can be an issue in itself. Sometimes we may take items that maybe the auditor didn't initially take and look at that as a thing. A couple other areas that exchange of information is exempt entities. That has basically changed dramatically. Used to be that you would basically get the entities, if you were making a sale to that entity, you would basically just get the exemption letter and that would be it. There was so much abuse of that basically somebody buys something for their or sells to the exempt entity, and basically they use it, pass it on to somebody else. So therefore, right now on exempt entities, you've got to show proof of payment, and that could be a credit card when they come in to buy it, or they could use a check. You keep a copy of the check. Obviously, an invoice from that exempt entity would support that that entity is the one purchasing it, and additionally, you would need to would be a safeguard for you is to you go out on a department's website and verify that exempt entity, especially if you do not have the letter. Resales is something similar to that. Basically, when you receive a resale certificate, it needs to be somewhat, it would be help you to basically verify that on the department's website, that it is a valid number as such. The department cannot go behind a resale certificate if it is a valid one, but if you will, we run into audits frequently where the auditors went back and that resale customer has been out of business for an extended period of time. Okay. Lastly, I'd like to talk a little bit about settlements. When I first started, we did very few of them. And right now we're doing more than I've ever seen in my time. The settlements are basically, you can do that at the time that you file. Your ICB-1 can be included. It's an ICB-2 is the form. You basically put down a reason for it, and it can be discussed at the conference. And at the conference, we can discuss, I could bring it up if I think there's a possibility, or you could bring it up if you would like to possibly do a settlement. The reasons for the settlement, we can't just do it, as I said before, for an inability to pay as such. It would really need to be a hazard for the department before they're going to enter into it. It has litigation. You can show that different ways. Presently, I think there's some that are being disputed because our regulations are not quite on tune with, may have expanded the statutes significantly. It could be a problem with the audit itself, with a projection or something that really is in the question. And lastly, I mean, the department will do it because, as I was told quite a while ago, that we never know what a judge will do if it does go past ICB. And as I said, that's one of my primary goals is to resolve this. So as we all know, that the next step is a much more expensive for both the department and the taxpayer.